Someone who sees the problem and finds opportunities, solves them to go out there and create fantastic value for himself. Vishesh Khurana, it is a pleasure to have you here today on Let's Chat with GP. What is exciting you the most about the world that we live in right now?
Internet happened, the world changed, and I think that AI we are seeing the same. I will probably peg this as bigger than internet.
Where did your passion for sales come from? Because that is something naturally people aren't, so adept to.
Sales is not an independent area. Everyone has to be good at sales, whether you are doing a job or running a business.
Every college kid today is only thinking मुझे तो Shark Tank करना है, मुझे तो बस पैसा होता है, मुझे तो किसी भी तरह से. What's your thought and advice both on those fronts?
One thing I've seen pre and post Shark Tank is the awareness of this ecosystem has grown significantly.
One word to describe building Shiprocket from scratch.
Pain.
One sector that you'd bet on in India or globally over the next 10 years, apart from logistics.
AI infrastructure.
Today's podcast is going to be a killer. Entrepreneur to entrepreneur, someone who's gone out there and created multiple companies, mega exits, and is on the cusp of a giant IPO as well. Someone who sees the problem and finds opportunities, solves them to go out there and create fantastic value for himself, his investors, and of course for the employees of the company as well. Vishesh Khurana, it is a pleasure to have you here today on Let's Chat with GB.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming down from Dubai. I know we planned this a week prior, but all flights out of Dubai had been cancelled and you're here and I'm just happy for that. How's everything going in Dubai at the moment?
I think it's really normal. As someone living there won't really see a difference. Of course, there's a lot of media coverage around it.
Right.
And you do see, and not see, but you hear some of these booms. But outside that, life is pretty normal. Everything is open. People are in malls.
Right.
So I haven't seen a lot of. The country actually managed the whole situation quite well.
Right.
And of course, Dubai doesn't have any media, so you don't know.
Right. And of course, I think what I did see in the news, or at least on social media, is that you had your Sheikh, who was out there at the Dubai Mall last week just to say that everything is fine, come out.
Without saying anything. That's just their way of, I think they do PR very well.
For sure.
That was just their way of assuring everyone that just chill.
Yeah. No, I love that. And of course, during the course of this conversation, I want to talk about, and what's happening in the AI world, because, that's something that's very, very close to your heart.
Yeah.
You have a lot of investments, all over the globe now and in various, businesses. We're going to talk about, that as well. What is some of the threats? What are some of the opportunities in the AI world, of course. But let's go back to a time when, you truly were a problem solver. And I was listening to one of your podcasts where you mentioned that, in the days of Nokia 2009-10, you started by developing apps under the OS, which doesn't even exist, anymore, which is Symbian. Talk us through those days. What was it like? What was the opportunity and how did you jump in there?
Yeah, so opportunity, I think, I jumped in by accident, purely accident. And one thing, I was 19, pretty much. The option was going to college or doing something else.
Right.
So I was in college at that point.
Yep.
I did take the admission, but it was just something that I have always been a critic of the education system in general. It just seemed a waste of time because everything is way outdated. Whatever we are learning today, and even today more so, today's system is still not evolved. And so for me, it was just something that I didn't want to waste my time on. So I was looking at what can I do, and I was just tech was a thing, and mobile apps was just an accident. So I went to these exhibitions, understanding what is happening in the world. And this one small company in a whole big tech exhibition with almost 150 stores, there was one company trying to tell people about mobile apps. And we are talking about 2008-9, where India had Nokia as a dominant brand. Then after Nokia, Apple had just entered. Right. And that's about it. Android didn't exist at the time.
Sure. And
the culture of app stores didn't exist. You don't have, the phones used to come with preloaded apps,
right,
and that's all you have.
No option to even download anything off a store like we have today.
Nokia didn't have it.
Right,
Apple just started it, but people didn't understand what mobile apps in general were.
Right.
So very, very early days. So knowledge arbitrage, someone very smart told me, knowledge arbitrage is where you can make money. So if someone doesn't understand how it's done, you can just charge whatever you want for it. That stuck, and it was like, let's try.
Yeah.
And for me, that company, Mobile Apps, was just a trading business. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to code. Mm-hmm. I don't understand tech in general. Mm-hmm. I'm a good sales guy. So fine, I'll go to a client, ask them what you want. Yeah. Okay, can you help me build this app?
Right.
I'll go to a developer, ask him, can you build this?
Yeah.
Developer will quote me, let's say 50,000.
Right.
I'll go back and ask for 5 lakhs and save wherever it charged. So my job was trading the whole thing. I never had a team. I never hired anyone. There were no employees in the company.
Yeah.
But the company looked like a company out from the outside.
Right.
And that was it. You were just trading. It's an age-old trading business.
Of course.
Yeah, but that was the most interesting business overall.
Right.
Because you could see you were meeting CTOs of the top marketing agencies.
Correct.
And these are like the best ones out there. McCann Erickson's, Leo Burnett.
Yeah.
They had clients like ITC, Coke, Lufthansa.
Of course.
They had no clue how they are built, how much time it will take. And I had to actually take an app, get it delivered in 1 week and sit on it for 2 months and then deliver to make it look worth the lakhs I've charged. So it was a fun learning experience.
And at this time, you're 20 years old and you're walking into some of these companies and talking to creative directors at top agencies and, of course, pitching them, this idea. And I also recall you mentioned that one of your first sales was when you took something for 50,000 and you actually sold it for like 5 lakhs.
Yeah, that was exactly the first sale.
I love it. So
I didn't want, the idea was not to sell for 5 lakhs. I said, I'll just quote 5 and I was expecting negotiation and just somewhere in the middle you settle. But no one negotiated. It's like, done. Okay.
I love it. Awesome. And then you had ITC come in with a really mega project as well.
That was the best fun project. Yeah.
So tell us about that. What happened with ITC?
So ITC at that point was launching a new cigarette brand. I remember each detail of it. It was called Arctic Menthol. And they wanted to do market research was a big thing back in the day.
Right.
So they said, what we want is we want to collect data of what cigarettes are, like what brands are people using.
Right.
The only way to do it, primary data collection. So they wanted a promoter, we call it, a guy, intern, just at every pawn shop, standing there and with a device which collects data.
Right.
But they wanted to make it a little bit interesting, saying, can you build us a game? And iPads as a device was new to India.
Right.
Like, fine, we'll procure hundreds of iPads, hire hundreds of these people, and we'll place them on all these pawn shops, and we will give these a game, because iPad was the first device which had an accelerometer. Right. So this was the first time people were experiencing using a tablet and moving it around to play a game, which became very exciting. Viral, right? So it was something that people would want to try. And for that, they had to give you their data.
Right.
And that was the whole idea, which seemed quite rudimentary at that point, but it was the project marketing budget was like hundreds of crores for the agency.
Wow.
It was fun. So I built the app. Great. That was the first easy part of the problem.
Right.
Then we bought the iPads, and India didn't have as many iPads. So you can't go to a store and say, do you have 100 pieces? Like each store would have 5 or 6 or 7.
Of course. Even today you go for 500. I mean, even Apple will still struggle to give you 500 in one shot.
And that point, it's like, how do you procure those many devices? Yeah. And they just outsourced it to me. It's like, just add it to your bill, just buy the devices. Crazy. So I was like going from store to store, from city to city, flight to flight. Everywhere I found any piece, I was just buying them out.
Wow.
And when you come back in a flight with those many iPads, they were like, what is this?
Correct.
But luckily it's domestic flights. I was not traveling outside, but every time I was stopped. Like, what is this?
Of course.
Like, no one had seen that whole setup.
Device at the time, in those quantities.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so you go to Amity, and I guess it's Amity Noida, right? Which is not too far from where we are today. You joined college, and a few semesters in, you said, this is not what I want to do.
Actually, a few weeks,
Few weeks in, okay. So what was the reaction of your parents at this time? Because there's also, this big thing that, log kya kahenge, and, I'm not judging because I was pretty much almost in the same boat, as well. But what was conversations at home like at that time when you said, I don't want to pursue my education or do something else?
The family I come from, my father is a businessman. He inherited his father from his father. So my grandfather started the business. Right. I can call it lucky or whatever you want to call it today. But the focus on education was always like, just get through your basic degrees and just you have to anyways join the family business.
Right.
So they didn't really care as much, because the only thing they hated was me not joining the family business.
Sure.
Because that was the expectation throughout.
Right.
That was the part that bothered, not the part that I left college. I think they expected me to join the family business, which was the expectation.
And what was the family business at the time?
So my family business was automobile hand tools, so manufacturing of hand tools.
Right.
typical automobile setup.
Got it. And something that had passed over the generation.
Yeah.
So hence it was expected that you would join that as well.
Yeah, it was kind of like we grew up in that. So my summer vacations were spent in the my factory, like learning about the business. Every free weeks we used to spend in the factory.
Right.
So it was a kind of obvious thing that this is going to happen, and all my cousins are still running those businesses.
Right.
Somehow I got my exit.
Interesting. And and you have, you've created so much, value from all the businesses, that you've done. To set context, Vishesh has recently, more or less exited his stake in Shiprocket. And Shiprocket itself is a fantastic story. And before we, of course, come to that, and the big IPO, which is just around the corner, post, all of this, you actually get into what was Shopify of, India at the time, and you start creating CartRocket. What was that like back in the day?
So CartRocket came from a very simple idea. So I sold one business and then I was just a consultant. Again, simple trading business. Mm-hmm. E-commerce came in new after mobile apps. Everyone wanted to have an e-commerce website.
Right.
And I just acted as a consultant helping people build e-commerce websites for them.
Right.
In the process, I realized India had so many bottlenecks. One, it is expensive. So if you want an e-commerce website, it used to cost lakhs, and lakhs in 2010-11 is a lot of money today.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one part. It used to take months to develop a website. Then it was full of bugs. Then to get a payment gateway, it was a process. There was maybe one company offering payment gateway, and the process was almost as high as maybe visa process, whatever. Most complicated.
CC Avenue or something?
I think CC Avenue, there's one more company. I forgot the name. There was one more company. CC Avenue was there.
Right.
Build Desk, I think, was there.
Could be. Yeah.
And one more. So where we partnered.
Right.
So payment gateways was a problem.
Yeah.
Logistics, let's not even go there. That was the last biggest problem available.
Yeah.
And that gave me a lot of problem statements. So I met my current co-founders as a customer. So they were an agency for me, and I was getting my websites made from them.
Right.
Same way as mobile apps.
Right.
There's a developer, there's a customer, I'm just the middleman.
Yeah.
And that's how I met my current co-founders, Sahil and Gautam.
Right.
A fun journey. They were building websites for me, and all of Sahil came from US. So he had some idea. He came with that vision. US has Shopify. India doesn't have Shopify yet. Why don't we build that? He had the macro blueprint laid out.
Right.
But that's about it.
So Sahil was the numbers guy, Gautam was the tech guy, and you were the sales guy.
Sahil was mostly tech and numbers together. Okay. So he loves his Excels.
Right.
Gautam was mostly ops. I was mostly sales.
Awesome.
So the roles were quite well spread.
Defined that way. Yeah.
You will sell, I will build, you will manage. That's how we kind of collaborated. And first time I joined them, they hired me as a sales guy. They said, you sell for us only. Right. Now you're good at sales.
Right.
And you're literally independent.
Sure.
And we are building. So they actually gave me a job, and 1 month in, they realized, let's just do it together.
Nice. Where did your passion for sales come from? Because that is something naturally people aren't, so adept to. And every time, even now, I go into college and I'm talking, because I also teach sales, to a lot of organizations. And I go into colleges and I ask, how many of you here want to look at getting into sales? And recently I was at girls' college, 130 people, in the audience. I said, how many of you want to get into sales or do something with sales? Not one hand went up. I'm like, okay, basically. But of course, then I did the session. I told them about how everything is in sale. Everything is a sale, right? Yeah. Even when you like that boy and you want that boy to go out with you and you convince him. I said, that's a sale. I said, today's Friday night. I said, if your deadline is 11 o'clock, but you want to stay out till 12 and you convince your parents, even that's a sale. I said, you want to eat Indian, your friend wants to eat Chinese, okay, and you're eating Indian. And I said, you get to eat that Indian. I said, even that's a sale. So then when I said, okay, how many of you think sales is going to play a role in your life? 1 hour later, okay, 80% of the room had their hands up. But it's something that most people are very scared of.
So, like you said, sales is not an independent area. Everyone has to be good at sales, whether you are doing a job or running a business. That's the core thing. Fundraising is again sales.
Oh, 100%.
Everything, like you said, everything, the core of it is sales. Even if you are a product manager, convincing your CTO of a certain thing is sales.
So true.
So that's the core of everything. Yeah. And I think there is no skill to be learned here. I think sales will always come from a confidence and to some certain degree overconfidence. You have to be so confident in the way you project, pitch, or anything.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't even have the whole information. But if you because the other party has zero information.
Right.
So you still have half.
Yeah.
You still have an edge above them.
Yeah. And I think it's about your conviction, right? If you are convinced, then you will be convincing.
Yeah.
So I think
that skill
plays
always,
a big role.
that skill I think is always, even in the company today, all my employees, we force everyone to sell. Even product managers are selling. So that is one thing that you have to continuously learn and adapt to.
Love it. I think that's such a cool thing. In fact, the only other person I know who does that is Grant Cardone. And in Grant Cardone's office, and Grant Cardone, of course, is Mr. 10X, and he's written Sell or Be Sold, all those sales books. Everyone in his office is expected to sell. So one time, in fact, I'm in his office, and the mailman who's bringing all the packages and everything, he's just sitting around, and Grant walks by, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And the guy's like, "I'm done." He said, "No, you're not." He said, "Get on the phone."
Yeah.
Right? So everyone sells. Everyone is actually out there.
And you have to, because when you start selling, even if you're unable to sell, but those calls will give you feedback as a tech product, ops, logistics manager.
Right.
Everyone will get that first-hand experience of the customer of why is he not buying.
Right.
That gives you enough perspective to improve at your product.
Oh, 100%. So post CartRocket, you guys try Craftly. Well, also if you're involved in Craftly as well?
Yeah. So it was the pivots was a journey. Like, so CartRocket, few years, it was doing well.
Right.
But it wasn't scaling as we wanted it to be. Second, it was the problem of churn. So CartRocket solved the ease of building websites.
Right.
So now you have a 5,000 rupee per month. You can get an e-commerce website bundled with the payment gateway. So you have solved the building of website.
Right.
But what we did not play a role at was marketing of the website. So people who were building websites, and back in the day, again, awareness was a huge gap. I personally met hundreds and hundreds of customers to understand where the gap is, why are people leaving the platform. The first thing you get an answer is, expectation of internet is, if I have a website on the internet, people will come. The part of you have to actually go and run ads and market wasn't obvious, and knowledge wasn't there. Everyone said कि website है, लोग आएंगे internet पे.
Build it and they will come.
And that was the core assumption of internet in general. So obviously there was no sales and people got bored of it after month 1 and 2. There were then customers who actually got sales, but they just couldn't manage. Logistics infrastructure is not available. The returns, products, warehousing. There was so much infrastructure problem of running an e-commerce business that having a website alone wouldn't cut it. So some of them failed, some of them lost money, some of them just didn't run marketing ads. In general, there was so much gap. So that didn't work in general. So we were thinking of what's next. And that time again, you try and catch that, because now you're a venture funded company. You're trying to understand what's the flavor of the season, whatever you call it. And that time, e-commerce was like consumers company were building valuations of billions.
Of course.
And everyone said consumer. And whatever the reasons being, took that call, like, let's try. And we knew it going in, it will be so expensive that we will have to raise a lot of money to even sustain ourselves or survive. But we still took that one because people were willing to give you money for it. Worst thing, first and ever advice, never do something just because people are giving you money for it.
Another big, very valuable piece of advice. That's just, don't take the money just because people are saying, go ahead and run with it. And I think a lot of mistakes that people make is that they don't understand that, when you have taken, money from an angel or a VC or a PE, ideally you should look at it as a debt. And you talk about this, that it's a debt that you have to repay. It's not like ash kar lo, maze kar lo, right? And a lot of people are just doing that. All they're thinking about is, okay. And of course, you mentioned that, in your early days, even you were thinking when the first exit came, ghadi milegi, right? And that was, also your motivation. But it almost has to be taken as responsibility that you have towards your shareholders. That it's something that not only you have to repay, but repay with multiple valuation. I mean, that's really what the thought process should be, right?
Unfortunately, the capital where its origins from, I think the capital, they also don't respect that capital the same way. People who are actually giving you that capital. So the receivers obviously don't have the respect of the same capital. And that is the biggest problem of this ecosystem in general. Because equity capital has the least respect out there. Everyone is trying to experiment and play with it versus actually go forward and treat it as a responsibility.
What's your thought in this, the Shark Tank culture? Because that's another thing I see a lot with the youth today. And again, when I'm at colleges, they're organizing their own mini Shark Tanks, and everyone wants to do a pitch deck or, a pitch thing. And every college kid today is only thinking मुझे तो Shark Tank पे जाना है, मुझे तो बस पैसा उठाना है, मुझे तो किसी भी तरह से करना है. What's your thought and advice both on those fronts?
See, one thing I've seen pre and post Shark Tank is the awareness of this ecosystem has grown significantly. So I'll give it to those folks because they've actually brought this whole business model to the masses.
Right.
I could have never explained to my father how this works unless for Shark Tank he finally figured it out himself.
Right.
But even the most smartest people, chartered accountants, nobody understood before that why are people giving you money and what are you doing with the money and udhar to nahi hai ye. So the awareness wasn't there. So yes, a lot of awareness has come through, but with that awareness, what also has happened with Shark Tank as a big boom, people talking about their returns, exits, multifold, 100 crore exits with 1 crore investments.
Right.
Everyone started looking at it as a lottery ticket also.
Agreed.
So everyone with bare minimum capital, who do not understand this business, has become an LP now and trying to use and see, they see it as a lottery ticket ki sab kharid lo ek, which of course is unhealthy in general because a lot of people who don't understand this have now jumped in as an investor.
Right.
And I know these, even people from Gujarat with traditional businesses, purely profitable, have now started using this. So that's a little bit of a problem, but that's good. That matures the ecosystem in general.
Yeah, and I think, for a lot of people coming on the show is whether they get a deal or they don't get a deal, it's also great marketing. I mean, we've had some friends who've been
that's
on
how Shark Tank's principle
show,
has been globally. It's always
it just
about
blows you up, and of course we had another friend and he came on Shark Tank maybe season 2, and the day after the episode aired, he said the phone just didn't stop ringing, and he said they were not in the money, they were not even in the market for money, but he said the phones just kept ringing and ringing and ringing and offers kept coming and like ab bas batao kitna chahiye aapko, hum denge, right? So it just became that kind of thing as well. So I think it's smart marketing from an entrepreneur's perspective.
But how do you use it is very critical.
How do you use
how
it
entrepreneurs cash in of that is if you're not prepared for it.
Right.
Even the bare core principles of I don't even have enough inventory to sell. So if you're not prepared to use it, it's a one shot opportunity.
I 100% agree. I'm seeing this firsthand because there was somebody in the office, one of the interns, we said, and of course, we run a gifting company as well. I said, anyone who's been on Shark Tank, reach out to them, and tell them you want to market their products, as corporate gifts and promotional products, some of them trending ideas. And when they said, kitna maal chahiye? And we said, even sometimes 1,000 or 5,000 pieces, like, ji, usko banane ke liye to 6 mahine chahiye. I'm like, wait, I don't understand. Like, you're on Shark Tank, you're making these big claims, and I'm saying I want 5,000 pieces. You ask me for like 6 months, which should normally be in your inventory. So you're right. Sometimes they're not prepared. They come in there and then they're just not prepared with what the scale.
Even handling that marketing, and then the second big thing is your product quality. Shark Tank will give you one shot, let's say, few thousand orders.
Right.
How do you sustain after that?
So true.
If you don't have a plan. It's good marketing, yes, to give you like a jump start. But after that, everything is on the brand, which we have seen. If someone does an analysis of every Shark Tank company there is, and let's see what their current status is, you will have your answers.
Nice. So maybe you want to do that in case you're listening in, create an app or a website, say where are they now? So take all the people who were on Shark Tank, India, and just see where were they then and where are they now. Could be a cool idea.
Without doing the analysis, I can tell you there's 10% success rate in general.
Very sure of that. Yeah. Agreed. So at Craftly, you were obviously a marketplace. It's almost like Etsy. And Etsy, of course, lists some really funky stuff, and I'm sure you did that as well. So you probably had a lot of people who were doing handicrafts, other, gimmicky products, and people from Radabad and otherwise. How did that business run?
So the core idea behind Craftly was Etsy, handmade. India is the biggest handmade producer market.
Right.
And we have beautiful products. I traveled. Actually, Craftly forced me to travel to parts of India which I would have not traveled in general.
Nice.
Saharanpur, Varanasi, Fatehabad, and you realize the manufacturing in this country is incredible. The kind of products we make from brass, from glass, from everything. But India in general doesn't pay for handmade because it's so widely available. We don't have the value. Very soon we realized that core value wasn't actually something that India cared about.
Right.
They had to improvise towards just becoming a marketplace where everything was selling. It didn't matter the quality and the curation after a point because we were also under pressure of building that whole thing up. But it's a great experience running a consumer company. I think consumer, from my personal experience, it's a founder DNA. Either you are a person who can run a consumer business or not. I think it's not like let's just do it.
Yeah.
Some people are just B2B in general.
And you're right. At that time, the market was so much on fire, right? I remember, you and I were chatting about Fashion New, and Fashion New used to have this concept where 11 o'clock an item used to open.
Flash sales.
Flash sales, right? And by 3 p.m. everything was sold out. And I remember when Pearl brought us on board we were selling Puma at the time. Okay, and Puma ran this offer on Fashion New, and the guys in Puma asked me, so what were the sales like? And I said, I think we did 13 lakhs in one day. It's like, no, something must be wrong. Even my flagship store in South East doesn't do 13 lakhs in one day. I said, yeah, we did 13 lakhs in one day, right? And it was just crazy. So you had that entire wave up, but then everything plateaued and crashed pretty fast as well, right?
So it's also about was Fashion New a great business if done slowly? The Flash's model is not died. It still exists in other parts of the world. I think when you try to scale something in valuation too fast, everything comes with the pressure of it. So today I have this version of is a lot of businesses that don't exist. Should they be a billion? Were they great businesses at few hundred million? Yes. Because you push them to become a couple of billions, they are now struggling. So everything has a value. Fashion New, on the other hand, I actually did the same exact business model. I copied Fashion New and started a business. This was between CartRocket and mobile apps called Status Stores. So I copied the entire model. I did that business myself and I failed miserably. Lost so much money there in 5-6 months. Because I realized when you try to offer that luxury experience is a big deal.
Right.
So you spend money on packaging, delivery,
for sure,
white glove delivery, all kinds of things. That just doesn't add up. Your margins don't justify. So your burn is so high, and if you're not raising that much venture, I lasted 5 months. Someone who raised venture lasted a couple or more.
Right. Yeah, and I understand why Craftly actually went down. And like we were also speaking, the same thing has happened in various other like hot and trending, like trends again. Let's speak, for example, look at EdTech. How crazy it was for EdTech, during the pandemic, and how quickly, it all unraveled.
So
and today nobody wants to talk about EdTech. I mean, you say EdTech and people want to run away from you today.
That's quite unfortunate actually. But EdTech and everything, even Shiprocket or any digital business, pandemic was one of those events that pushed everyone leaps forward. Like we completely short-circuited 5-7 years of evolution in the first year of India went digital. Everyone wanted to learn, go digital, and everyone realized to have that presence. So that's how we're all there.
Right.
EdTech, I think Byju's and all, I think they were great business models. The whole thing about scaling and going viral, like going so big so fast, I think was the biggest killer.
Spend too much money. Right?
As a business model, I believe it's a great business model. It gave students the opportunity to still continue to learn while sitting at home. The content, I still believe the way kids now consume content, Byju's ended up delivering that animations, that videos, because kids are consuming content on videos.
Kind of ahead of its time also in a way.
Ahead of its time, that's how big businesses are built. So I think thought, idea, everything spot on. And the execution on chasing valuation, maybe that's what went wrong.
And I think just the spending, the bringing in the Messis and, doing the Indian team jersey. And these are expensive propositions. Even large corporates have to really think twice about.
I think people just straight away say this is a founder problem, but the larger problem there is when you raise venture, and we are all in the same boat. When you raise venture, these people will come to your offices properly suited up. And as founders, and especially when you're young, you're sitting there with your shorts and t-shirts and just trying to. So you will see them as the smart ones. They project, that's what they are. They come from great institutes. They project themselves as the person who knows everything. And you will rely on their advice a lot.
Of course.
What I have seen over the time is actually most, and I'm not trying to demean anyone, but from a venture money manager business model, you went to a great college, you were hired by someone to run a venture, you never had the experience of actually building a company. So your primary knowledge comes from either your consulting background or your MBA or just basic case studies you did in your B school.
Very theoretical, right?
Very theoretical
knowledge.
So, and these advices come from your investors at a lot of times, and founders will rely on those advice thinking that's the smart thing to do. So I personally don't think it's always about the founders. A founder who has no background, let's say coming from small towns, barely any background,
Of course.
he is not really going and thinking about getting Messi as a brand ambassador. I think it is also a function of a lot of agencies and people you hire who advise you on how to do this.
A marketing head who might come in from some,
You've
global
hired your
company.
Coke's marketing head and now their strategies come in.
Right.
So it's not blaming the founder for everything. Is like, yes, you have the control to say no, but now you have so much money. So you would want to experiment with it. Like, karke dekhte hain.
Agreed.
And that's the problem.
And funny, another place where I see this happening like a lot right now is in the MSME IPO space. Like, so you've got these small guys, who running companies, and there's someone I know in the salt business and the solar business, and like just the most bizarre number of, and I see them on the website on Chittorgarh. I just see how all these websites are listing some of these IPOs, and these are micro companies, or like really, really small scale companies, which probably don't even deserve to go to the market.
Absolutely.
And of course, the second thing is, again, they have no idea what to do with the funds. And they have no idea that in 3 years, you have to look at a main board listing. But the merchant bankers come in and they give them, such big dreams that, the small Lalaji just sitting over there, just 2 sons, and, and they're like, nahi ji, chali raha dhanda. Nahi sir, IPO karenge, aisa hai, waisa hai.
Yeah.
And especially in the MSME IPO space, big IPO, different game altogether. But again, I think that, they just get talked into by some smart people who are obviously only charging a lot of fee and everything else. But does this space also disturb you?
So it's nothing different than what's happening in early stage venture. It's just a reflection. The problem here is no one who's actually putting the money. So it's so well spread distributed that no one is actually losing one, because it's so well distributed. The whole capital is so distributed. Secondly, people who are putting the money don't also actually see where they're putting the money.
Right.
So if I'm investing in an MSME IPO and I have, let's say, 2-3 lakhs to invest, what I would do, I would 20,000 each, I would just spread out into multiple MSMEs and hope someone will work.
Right.
It's just like,
you
know how gamble, like you have your roulette table. Just put some chips,
numbers.
koi to lagega. And that's how early stage venture is.
Yeah.
Early stage venture, while fund managers claim that they're doing some work, but the reality check there is very simple. Everyone is following a principle of the roulette table saying, let's make enough bets and hope the probability works in my favor, and then hope the maths of economics works in my favor, that one company pays off for my return, the second company pays for profit, and let's say 98 will die, and we all understand that today, which is nothing different. And unfortunately, that's the MSME IPO. If that whole ecosystem is used well, it's how great companies and great economies are built. Unfortunately, these things have just been abused rather than actually used.
Very much so. Very much so. And very disturbing because, like you said, the merchant bankers will make money, the underwriters will make money, initially even promoters will make money. आखिर में फंसेगा तो मतलब वही SME इन्वेस्टर जो था जो आखिर में रह गया.
वो फंसा वो भी नहीं है. रियलिटी चेक फंसा कोई भी नहीं है इसमें. We are all old age. इसकी टोपी उसके सर जा रही है. And let's go to again venture again. There is an LP who's actually the core जिसका पैसा है. He has so much money. He's
when
only
you say LP we're talking about?
The person who's investing in the fund.
Okay.
So the fund who's investing in you also is raising money from some LPs.
Got it.
Now that LP is only deploying 5% of his deployable or 10% of his deployable wealth into this asset class.
Correct.
For a fund, now he has 100 LPs. 100 LPs have combined into, let's say, 100 crore fund.
Right.
Now he's taking the 100 crore and redistributing between 30 companies at a couple of crores each.
Right.
In this entire distribution, if that LP loses money, it won't really affect his. He's not going bankrupt by losing that money.
Yeah, it's
the fund manager, irrespective, will make management fee.
100%.
So the whole incentives are kind of misaligned.
Right.
So the fund manager, of course, he has a bigger carry to be made, but the management fees is not bad at that point.
Right.
Now, if you see the spread out culture. So that is where the respect for this capital doesn't come around a lot. Because LP is not asking as many questions. The fund managers they all know they will not last in that fund long enough to see it through.
Right.
So they are only trying to figure out my current. Right. And same thing with MSME setup. People who lose money also lose quite, I hope at least, not people putting their net worth on it.
Of course.
So
Yeah, because to my mind, it comes to my mind almost like a pyramid. So let's say you got the LP on top, then you've got like the funds, the hedge fund, merchant bankers, etc. You got like then the promoters, all of that. But as the base gets wider, especially when they hit IPO, and let's say and I'm saying that there's a company like XYZ Solar, okay, and they IPO'd at $80. They went up to like 300, 350 because market conditions were great. More and more people, started, jumping in. And then eventually market conditions turned, which, we're already seeing now in the, at least SME IPO space. I mean, reading 70% of IPOs are actually opening now at cost or below. And of course, anything that's 1 or 2 years down is lower still. So what's happened is that as, the people who got in at $350, when the hype was there, like they talk about that Jaspal Bhatti video, right? The PP water balls video. So then the people bought in there and the price comes down to, let's say, 150, 70, 60. And people have this thing that they keep averaging, keep buying more. Then the company to achhi hai. They know the promoters or some of them know it's a good company. Those are the guys who left holding the bag, and which happens in every crash.
The fact is, when you say company to achhi hai na, uska basis kya hai? Unfortunately, we don't do the work and maths is out of the window. The valuation is, the company has become an asset which is now being flipped.
Right.
It's all about demand and supply now.
Right.
How many people actually want to buy the share and how many people want to. So the valuation is now a function of demand and supply.
Agreed.
Nothing to do with your core company. Maths had given us enough formulas to derive valuations and stuff.
True that.
We just stopped looking at those numbers.
But you as a smart investor, you understand that. But like the regular.
No, I'm not. Actually, I also don't.
Right. Okay.
A lot of times, FOMO is the biggest driver of the whole venture as well as public markets.
Greed, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
But when I joined Tribe, Arjun, who was our investor at Shiprocket, the way he thinks about the world and investing was completely fresh. And so they have a framework, they have a software called Termina. Every company goes through that software and proper data work. And the software makes the decision of one, whether or not to invest, two, at what price to invest.
Nice.
So the emotions and FOMO has gone out. So it doesn't matter how much I like the founder or the best of the funds are running after him. If the software rejects, no one has the capability. And that was a fresh way of investments. It might not work or work, but at least there is some level of basic discipline compared to FOMO.
I like that because, like I said, sometimes we get enamored by, a strong founder, a trending story, FOMO,
most of them. Famous founders will raise money at $100 million seed, straight up, or at certain stages, 300, 500 million was seed valuations for post-exit founders.
Of course.
Which
just happened recently for, of course, we both know Sanjeev Bikhchandani. And one of his mentees has gone ahead and done a pretty big deal in that space with the product.
Post-exit founder will go and ask for money and they will get it without a product, without revenue, without anything, on basis of idea. But now you're banking on that person who has made money once for everyone. Now you're hoping that he will make money again for everyone.
But बहुत rare है. It's not happened that often. I mean, there aren't too many cases like that who actually gone ahead and delivered repeatedly.
Again, so data is available for everything. We can go back and now see every post-exit founder, what has happened to their next venture.
Agreed.
I will, without doing the research, I can tell, once you are an exit founder, unfortunately, you have made so much capital, your personal wealth. So things also change in that direction. Very few can keep their discipline and that passion together after being first time. And a lot of them have made that money first time. So yes, if you don't know if it will work or not, but if I have 3 people sitting in front of me, one person just returned 50x and these 2 have just not. I would just try and put my bets there without logic. I would just put my bets there.
Like in a casino, right? Follow the winner. Like if someone's trending, like Gus Jaws ke saath, right? So cool. And we're going to come back to, what you see in the future. And we're having a bit of a chat on the AI side and the disruption that's coming there as well. But let's go back to Shiprocket again for a bit.
Sure.
Okay. And so, of course, post Craftly, and again, you guys were seeing the problem that exists in the logistics, ecosystem. And you came into the model which is very different. Like you weren't wanting to own any of the infrastructure. So you didn't want to own warehouses or own fleets. So very different from, let's say, a delivery or a FedEx or a TTDC. So none of the inventory was actually yours. You guys were more like logistics tech. So just tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about what Shiprocket was all about. How was your model different? And the early days.
So for us, when we were running Craftly, logistics became our own biggest problem. And on the heart of the company, we are a tech company. So we were trying to solve all of our logistics problems by tech, building some or the other code or tech or some platform to help solve problems of Craftly.
Right.
And that platform kept evolving, and became into that engine, which was, people said, if that is working so great for us, the first thing we did for Craftly was, let's put all of these companies in one place, because India is unorganized. No single company covers all pin codes of India. So in order to cover every pin code of India, you'll have to, one, partner with everyone.
Correct.
Now you have 5 partners.
Right.
How do you decide which order to give to whom?
Correct.
We had to write some level of allocation code and technology for our own use.
Yeah.
Then now that you have given these orders to so many people, how do you recon that who delivered how many, cash aaya ki nahi aaya, cash on delivery? So again, build tech to solve that recall problem. Then once returns aa raha hai, build tech to solve our problem. So the stack was built for Craftly, but the learnings were immense, and the problem was kind of stayed in front of us.
Yeah.
That it's a big problem for this. If we are facing and being well funded, I have engineers, tech, everything at my disposal. If I am facing that problem, imagine every single MSME who's trying to do it out there.
For sure.
So it was kind of, you can see the problem up front. Now, how do you make that call of your third pivot? You have already pivoted once. You pivoted twice. When we were trying to do Shiprocket, what the biggest challenge we faced was, the idea wasn't the problem. The unit economics wasn't. But people just lost trust and belief on us as founders. It's like, वो भी नहीं चला, ये भी नहीं चला.
तो क्या ये भी चलेगा कि नहीं चलेगा?
So it just stopped becoming about the product. It just became about, we don't think you are capable. And that happens. I'm not blaming anyone. Kind of, if I was investing, I would have looked at anyone like that with the same eyes. So nothing different about that.
Yeah. And who were some of the early believers that said, "Chal, theek hai, let's run with it, and we believe in you guys"? Who were some of the early names that came in?
So believers by force or by choice is a good question, because now you already have your people on your cap table. They have already invested with you.
Right.
For them, they have to believe it, because either this or nothing. So go try.
Correct.
And then the new investors, I think the biggest thing that happened was Tribe, which is also now the fund I am part of for India. So Arjun Sethi, who's he became our biggest, the change that came in the company.
Nice.
He mentored us through that, and that changed everything for us. So for Shiprocket, I think he saw something. He wrote actually something. So Tribe writes these N of ones. He wrote a paper back in 19 when they invested. It's on their website today.
Okay.
So he wrote a 20-30 page Shiprocket N of 1.
I read that actually. It's a very detailed document.
It's back in 2019 when nothing existed.
Wow.
And today what we are is actually quite close to what he predicted.
Yeah.
So he saw it years ago. And today what we are is exactly what he saw.
Awesome.
So that's a big one.
Yeah, I was on the Tribe website yesterday, and now that you mentioned, I think there's 12 or 13 different investments that are mentioned. And okay, I didn't know that's what they were called, but yeah, I in fact saw that, and it was very, very well put.
Yeah, and the fact is they put it together when none of that existed, or we as founders didn't.
Right.
When we read it for the first time, even then we never thought this is possible or was anything.
And Tribe is probably now like the second largest shareholder in Shiprocket after Bertelsmann from the Netherlands. So I think they hold about 20%, and Tribe has about 14 point something percent. And
actually, there's multiple entities, so a little bit more, yes.
Got it. And amongst founders, you guys are still probably holding about 10% amongst the three of you at the moment. Okay, lovely. As a founder, when you decide it's time to, let equity go, because I think that's something that a lot of founders wrestle with that point as well. So when is the right point?
So for every founder is different. A lot of founders try to hedge throughout the journey. A lot of founders would probably just make sure that at least I am protected from one side, and then I am free to take the risk for the other equity.
Right.
There is no such thing as right time. When are you allowed to? A lot of times founders will be the last one to be allowed to actually take any money out before anyone. So if there is a perfect time combination of one, you're allowed to. I don't know if anyone would be offered and would say no. No, I don't want it. They might just hedge around the price a little bit a lot of times, but it's about when do you get the opportunity, and there is no right or wrong time. Okay. I personally now, after seeing this through, my belief is hold it as long as you can.
Yeah.
We have done that.
Right.
We'd never, as Shiprocket, no exits were there for the first 9 years of the company at least.
Yeah, and which is now because 2017 and now 26, and now you guys are going to IPO.
Yeah.
In
The
a
company
couple of
started in
weeks.
2012.
2012. Yeah. Okay.
Started in 12.
Okay. So going back to CartRocket days then.
Yeah.
Got it. So CartRocket, Craftly, Shiprocket. I thought Shiprocket.
So of course,
17.
first 3 businesses were not successful.
Right.
So
Right.
first 5-6 years, so we were just struggling with product market fit.
Of course.
When we found the product market fit, now it's about
Of course.
when do you get your first
So you excited
chance.
are you excited about the IPO now?
So I think a lot of people treat IPO as this milestone, an award ceremony, or whatever it is.
So true.
IPO is not that. Not excited for the IPO at all. It's just one more event or exercise as a part of the growth of the journey everyone should do.
Interesting.
And just not party after that. It's not something that to be celebrated. IPO is not something to celebrate.
Yeah.
What you do after.
Agreed.
Celebrate after 3 years if you have built value after
And
the
you give
company.
return to your investors.
If you have been that company that 3 years post listing has generated value for everyone as part of your journey, celebrate then. Not
that.
going public as a milestone.
I love that. Again, such a valuable, insight and share that it's not the IPO that's a milestone. It's when you've delivered, 5x, 10x, 20x returns, for your investors. I think that's a milestone to be celebrating. I think that's so cool. Yeah. So, we all know how Shiprocket's done, and that's fantastic. And you really came in on time. And of course, you mentioned already how the pandemic was also an amplifier, because at that time, I think, and truly, for me, even in our space, the work that we did, it was actually logistics that defined the winners and the losers. Because pandemic and there hardly things were, moving, and whoever cracked logistics at that time, like we had to start shipping welcome kits to, employees' homes. Now, an organization like Deloitte, which had 100,000 employees. So imagine shipping 100,000 kits.
Yeah.
And we used to use Shiprocket, as well, because, you guys were also at the time helping a lot of, the smaller companies. But it was crazy. To send across 100,000 packages to 100,000 homes, because they were care kits that all these global companies want to give. It was madness. I think pre-pandemic, no one had even thought about something like that. But at that time, it just became the norm.
And the fact is, things didn't break as we expected, because there was a part of logistics that freed up the space, and that part was taken over by e-commerce.
Right.
So obviously, the large part of logistics was also freed up. That things didn't break as much as I expected them to break.
Right.
India, Copa, but luckily at that point we also had startups like Delivery, we had Shadowfax, all these new age companies.
Right.
They are way more agile to just quickly adapt and change their internal process compared to if you're a large company without taking names. Changes take time in your processes.
Yeah.
So luckily, because they existed, everyone was able to keep it going.
Right. You're right. I think at that time, what was moving? There was things like care kits, so it was PPE. That was what
Everything was moving.
About, right?
Everything was moving. People, not just a lot of care stuff, pharma, but outside that, everything.
Yeah.
Shopping was happening.
Right.
I don't know why people were shopping, but they were.
Yeah. घर बैठे stock market में तो छाप ही रहे थे note, right? Because the stock markets had also started running.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, had
a lot of people became traders overnight.
For sure.
Everyone became traders overnight.
Yeah.
So India did get a big boost in terms of.
Of course. And people still say, right, even the traders who came in at the time, or even let's say the new age investor who came in at the time, they still haven't felt what a decline would look like. This has just been a great run. Maybe there've been some dips, where
so
the
everyone
market
who
came
started
down,
the market at 21 hasn't yet seen
Agreed.
proper one, because they have not seen the Great Depressions, they have not seen the busts, proper ones.
So and you are feeling that it might be around the corner.
Not around the corner for the entire larger economy. Of course, the global geopolitical system, whatever is happening today in the world, do signal that one, you can't tell.
Correct.
There is nothing that is given. Things can change overnight. Everything changed overnight for a lot of things. A lot of times over. But we are today very close to that point of inflection, and that's a personal view. I think a lot of things have been overpriced. A lot of things have lost logic. The maths is out of the window.
Right.
And yes, whenever you go through that, you are just at one. The bubble is only one pin away.
Agreed.
That's it.
Yeah, awesome. So let's go ahead and do a bit of a rapid fire.
Sure.
So one word, one sentence, whatever really comes, to your mind. And of course, at the end of the podcast, there has to be a hamper that comes along with the rapid fire as well. So, one word to describe building Shiprocket from scratch.
Pain.
Okay. Biggest mistake that you made that you hope to never repeat.
Listen to smart people.
The Zomatos, the Eternals, Tribe. When all these investors came through, which one felt unreal? Like, how is this happening? Like one name when it came on board, you were like, oh my god, like how is that happening?
Actually, all of them, but the most was Zomato, because it was just one, they're not a fund, and it was quite out of nowhere that the check size and everything about that.
Yeah, love it. Fundraising or scaling operations, what gave you like more, not that you have gray hair, but what would have given you more gray hair at the time?
Operations or every day long.
Yeah. Fundraising you've been easy because you're also
it's not easy, but operations, comparatively, operations is always harder.
One trait that you look for in every person that you bring on to a key role in your organization?
Very, very simple answer, and it's a little longer, but yeah. One thing, if I can take you spend a day in a resort and spend that whole weekend, that's the biggest one.
I like that. So if you can take someone and spend an entire weekend with him or her, then they're a good fit for you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Everything else falls in place.
Right. I like that. Best advice that you ignored anytime in your journey growing up, and something that you wish you hadn't?
One advice is going to be read.
Read, yeah.
I haven't done enough.
What do Indian founders get wrong when they pitch their businesses to VCs?
Big numbers, projections, like wild projections.
They end up giving wild projections.
All the time.
Yeah. And what's the repercussion of giving wild projections?
You never hit those numbers.
Which can then lead to like creeping acquisitions and the likes.
Everything else is, it's like a house of cards. Everything falls apart.
One sector that you'd bet on in India or globally over the next 10 years, apart from logistics?
AI infrastructure.
Data centers, chips.
Not just data center chips, people who are in that space also are enough of infrastructure.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. People who get AI is good infrastructure as well. Right. A Shiprocket competitor that you respected the most?
Picker.
Which you bought.
Yeah.
Right. If you can't beat them, you buy them. Like that. One app that you couldn't run your life without?
One app? Zomato.
Yeah.
Quite, yeah.
One book that genuinely changed how you think?
This is a book called Outliers.
Yeah. Malcolm Gladwell, is it? Yeah. Okay, nice. One advice for every D2C founder listening in right now who's struggling with logistics?
Unit economics.
Yeah. Are unicorn valuations sometimes more PR than reality?
PR.
More PR, yeah. Founder ego, asset or liability?
Super big liability. The biggest liability ever.
Yeah. Okay. Hence, I think what kills more startups, is it bad products or bad founders?
Bad founders.
VC money, rocket fuel or dangerous addiction?
Addiction.
Is building a startup today easier or harder than it was 10 years ago?
Much easier.
Do founders sometimes fall in love with their own story?
All the time.
And that's dangerous, right?
And that will always be the case.
Fake it till you make it. Is that acceptable in startups?
No.
Interesting. A lot of people would have actually done.
But that's how a lot of things happen with them. It's no.
Right.
One word answer.
Yeah. Are layoffs sometimes necessary leadership or just poor planning?
Absolutely necessary. Poor planning is not always the case. Absolutely necessary thing for survival.
Right. Is the media today too obsessed with unicorns?
Yes.
The most overrated startup buzzword right now?
AI.
100% on that. I was know you were going to say that.
Yeah.
For sure. And if Shiprocket had a movie made on it, who would play you in the movie?
Me?
Which actor would play you in that movie?
I think Ranveer Singh, that Rocket Singh sales, probably.
Yeah. Awesome. And awesome. And on that note, we will end our rapid fire. So thank you so much for those answers. I loved the frankness. I loved how there were no smokes and mirrors, and you just came out there and you just gave the brutally right answer as well. So Let's spend about 10-12 minutes to talk about what you see in the future. You're spending right now a lot of your time in Dubai. You're with Tribe. You're obviously seeing a lot of stories. You're also doing a lot of investing, across various sectors. What is exciting you the most about the world that we live in right now?
So I think the world is changing as we know it, and it will change. One of those events that happen once in decades.
Right.
Internet happened, the world changed.
Yeah.
And I think that AI, we are seeing the same. When computers were invented, the world changed.
Right.
We are seeing the same thing.
Yeah.
Almost, I will probably peg this as bigger than internet to a certain degree, because the world as we know it will change, and the skills, everything, intelligence, the biggest assets for people were skills, intelligence, network.
Right.
They all have become redundant. They hold no value today. So everyone has to now be very, very cautious about, keep your eyes and ears open. Please go and learn, evolve. If you don't, the speed at which artificial intelligence is evolving, there will be a time you won't be able to catch up.
So what is the minimum that someone needs to do today? Let's say, your advice to like 20-year-olds or even 30-year-olds, even older people, even people like, in the late 40s now. What's your advice, the minimum that they need to do when it comes to AI?
So the minimum, I think, is now everyone should try their hands on vibe coding in general. So try and solve any simple use case in your own business. Let's say, even if you run a grocery shop, just try and see how I can build certain things to optimize my own shop's anything. So everyone should try their hands on vibe coding in general, because that will force you.
Yeah.
Because AI can't be learned by reading books today. There are no books. There is no curriculum.
Right.
There is no one to tell you, because people building AI they also don't know what they have built and how that's reacting and what it is doing.
Right.
It is going out of hands. So there is not going to be any curriculum that will teach you. So the only way to learn is to try and experiment hands-on.
So true. So true. Yeah, like I love how, there'll be certain universities, I won't name them again, but they'll say, oh, my AI course and you must do it. I'm like, how do the curriculum? They're like, 2.5 saal par. I said, 2.5 saal? I said, boss, anything that's 2.5 weeks old sometimes, seems like it's already outdated. If you're talking about doing a course that's 2.5 years old, I said, what are they going to teach you? Because today it's crazy, right? Now, when you mentioned vibe coding, and of course I've been playing around with this, a little bit, Replit, Lovable, Emergent. Any names that come to your mind which are, really good ones for people to try?
I think Replit has been a great personal experience for me. It actually is capable of delivering a fully usable product.
Right.
Lovable is great for front-end websites and everything else. When there's a long tail of products which are now coming around, like even sales is, if you are a sales person, if you can just optimize your own workflow, automate your own workflow, there is Apollo.io, there is something called, so you can, N8N of course is a big one, so tie up everything together. There is make.com to tie up these flows together.
Base
So
44? Base 44? Is that another one?
There's a bunch of them. Lemist is another one. So Lemist helps you just automate your LinkedIn or code reach out workflows.
Right.
So every individual, whether you are at a job or a business, should start automating their own workflows and just be 10x better than what they are just doing today.
I love it.
And that will help you get at least somewhat familiar with this whole new world. And it's also going to be scary, because then you will start saying, Meri Zurat hi kya hai? And as a human, I see that a bunch of times when I encounter some product, like, why are we needed? My skills, whatever I did, like people, let's say purely financial analyst and everyone building these models and projections and Excels is like a 20-minute job today. Marketing, graphic designers. I think Hollywood and Bollywood will change drastically.
Video editors are still in business, don't worry.
I think that's the one thing we should not give. This giving that assurance, no, yours is safe. No, it's not. And that assurance is the biggest.
Now you're not safe.
So that assurance is the biggest misconception, that people will keep that and take it away. We are not doing anyone any good by giving them that fake assurances. It's not.
Yeah. No, you mentioned sales and AI enablement tools for sales. So I came across another founder, Amanpreet's based out of originally Jalandhar, then Bangalore, now between California and India. He started a company called Humantic. I don't know if you heard of Humantic or not.
I have not.
crazy tool. Okay, because when you go out to sell, okay, every person has a different buying persona, right?
Yeah.
Psychometrics, right? The DISC, the Ds and the Is and the S and the Cs. Humantic is a tool which will scrape the internet, go to your LinkedIn profiles, everything else. It'll tell you what your psychometric profile is. How should you be spoken to? Okay, how should you be written an email to? What words to use or words not to use, and everything else. Like crazy tool. So I've been, of course, talking a lot about them. Even when I go in and consult various companies, and the companies that have used Humantic, they're like, what a crazy tool. Because psychometrics is very important. Psychometrics married by, let's say 10x sales techniques or sales techniques that we've grown up selling. It's game changer.
Very interesting.
So I'll hook you up with Ankit as well, great guy. And what he's building, and they're building now buying committees and something else, one of the next level game.
Yeah.
But you're right, here is a tool which is an AI tool, which like Apollo IO, and Lucia and some of the other stuff that's there is changing the game.
Yeah.
And yet there's salespeople, okay, and I don't name those salespeople, but who are saying, nahi, jaise hum 30 saal pehle beche the, waise hi bechenge. We're going to do exactly what we did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I said, dude, you're dead. I said, if you are not doing what is required, and you also mentioned very importantly, it has to be hands-on. So when sometimes we do our AI boot camps with sales, it's like we open it right now. Okay, let's work on it right now. Let's create stuff right now. And people walk away and they're like, we never even.
For me, my productivity is now 500 times more as an individual human. The kind of things right now I'm sitting here and my Mac minis back home and agents are working as we know them. Yeah. I'm actually working on a very interesting product right now. So decision making as humans has been somewhat backed by some numbers, advice and gut. Then a friend of mine, she's a poker player, and I learned a very interesting thing about how poker players are trained in their decision. There is a framework they follow. Yeah. Like one of the smartest women I've met in.
I hope it's not Nikita Luther.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's been on the podcast and she's a friend and she's smart as hell, right?
Yeah. And when she explained me how their decision making, there is a framework behind it. So I'm trying to take that build it into a product where now backed by AI. So if I have a strategy in my mind, can I backtest that with some frameworks and some logics and some AI? So actually the product is halfway there. It's going to be live soon. But I vibe coded it entirely. No developers.
That would make a lot of sense because, I've played poker all my life. At least for the last 30 years maybe. And again, it's there's just so much that's involved in it in terms of, the thinking, the strategy. You're talking about position, bet sizing, psychology. So many things come into play.
And that's purely how you run business.
I lent her a book and the book was, Oops, I Blew Up. Made too much money playing, running my business the way I play poker.
Yeah.
So she actually borrowed that book from me. In fact, reminds me I have to ask her for the book back. But the point is that you're right. I think that's just fantastic, right? And I think, as you said, that if people start vibe coding and solving real world problems, that's a great way to just get into it. And it's just getting so advanced. You said that, there's stuff running on your Mac Mini and all of that.
Yeah.
Today with, Cloud Code and, whatever is happening.
I can explain to you workflow right now, what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So I have my OpenClaw setup.
Right.
I have agents, multiple agents. Each agent, I have now given it a personality and a skill on how they should be doing a certain role, exactly like I would hire an employee with a certain skill I want. So like one person is only responsible for scraping the web, researching everything that there is, and creating a content book which is going to be potentially go viral. And then that person's job is to only create that research and create those content subject pipelines and make sure that that's one bucket. Then agent 2 is now, whose entire skill is he's a great content writer and a publisher. He's taking that and for each of them writing beautiful content. The model behind that agent is different. The model behind the first agent is different. The model behind first agent will be Kimmy Claw. The model behind the agent 2 would be Grok. They write great content. Then there's a third agent that is model behind that would be Gemini plus Nano Banana. That's creating amazing graphics to pair up with the text that they have. Then agent 4's job is he's just a social media manager. That's job is to follow a social media calendar. One, make that, and then use that social media calendar and make sure content is posted on each platforms at the right time and spaced out. And now that agent has given a humanizer personality where the content should not look like it's written by an AI. So his job is to take that content, humanize it, and post it like it's written by a human. Then agent 5 is after reading all the comments and every DM that has come through that channel and taking those DMs and putting it into a CRM. Agent 6 is now taking that CRM and making sure he's now acting as a sales guy and communicating what I want.
Crazy.
All of this is happening. This workflow is fully automated, and this is exactly what I did manually. For sales, how do you find leads? You go on LinkedIn, you probably buy the premium membership, you will put some 5 filters. The list that comes, you will create a mail merged style text where the name changes, his company name changes to make it look a little bit personalized.
Correct.
How your mail merges work. The cold email campaigns. The only thing that changed was your name and your company name. Everything remained same. But today, each email, that email AI can do a background check on you.
Will be personalized.
Will be personalized to a different degree altogether. Crazy. And then send you a message. I just got an email yesterday saying, as this guy who did this, and there was deep information about me. I know that's written by an AI, but I have opened that email. And I have replied back. I have replied back. Let's get on a call. Even while knowing it's an AI, but I replied back because that was quite enough for me to get on a call.
Love that. Wow. You mentioned like 6 entire departments that you wiped out with one Mag Mini. And you said you were looking at building a company which has 0 employees.
That's my goal. So the next journey phase of life would be to be at least try and attempt to build a company with only AI agents as employees in the back. It might not happen today, tomorrow, but I'll keep at it, continuously evolve these agents and these agents are also self-learning, right? They will also become better every day.
Crazy.
The way AI is evolving, like if you see what happened with GPT-5 and GPT 5.4, there's a stark difference. Then Gemini comes and launches a different model which is way better.
Right.
So this competition and the money, these companies are worth 300-400 billion, like bigger than a couple of country GDPs. The amount of money they have, the research that's happening, the innovation that's happening we have not seen that at any scale in any of these events. The money that's going into these research, good and bad both. But
of course, I love it. I love it how how you lit up and you've spoken about all of that, and it takes me back to when you mentioned right at the beginning when you started out with the Nokia apps and everything else, and you spoke about those 2 words, and that's knowledge arbitrage, right? And that's happening again today as well.
But that won't last. Same, it didn't. It lasted for years for e-commerce and application development with AI. That knowledge arbitrage, everyone is smart today. Everyone has the same apps on their phone. Everybody can ask the same question to the same apps. So knowledge arbitrage is actually the one thing that is dying completely.
But what about those people who are right now obtuse to the fact that they have to go in and start using more and more AI? People are saying, like they're sitting on the sidelines watching.
They will now rely on outsourcing. So there will be a lot of, so I know 23, 22-year-old kids today have completely given up on the opportunity. Job to karni nahi hai. Because they will be the ones, people who are completely averse to trying will outsource ki mere liye workflow bana do. And these kids will make money, a lot of money from them. But in the longer run, people who are not willing to try or get themselves evolved to this will anyways just be somehow or the other left behind, because someone else building the workflow for you isn't the same as what you would probably understand.
Agreed. Because the depth that you could get into
because
it.
Someone who's building a workflow for you will build the same workflow for 20 people, and then your edge is gone anyways.
Exciting time, but also crazy times.
It's the most crazy times. The next few, I think, I don't even see that as a very long time. Like what we will see in years from today. And now the world is changing by the month. That's for sure.
Yeah, sometimes even by the week, depend on what's happening geopolitically. So I think it's just such a crazy cocktail, right? So you've got the geopolitics, you've got AI, okay, and then you've got like the entire global financial ecosystem, on the edge. I mean, no one knows what's happening. Our bonds going to explode, our stock market's going to crash. Our treasury is going to be sold off. I think it's a time which is.
And the other biggest challenge to the stock markets and public market equities is. It took a lot of research for you to be differentiated from someone who doesn't have the same information as you.
Right.
But that is changing so fast, and the models, deep research has become so much better. Today, with one prompt, I can get so much information on one company which was not possible. I built a small trading agent for myself. That agent is performing consistently, but let's say it's 15 days, but it's been consistently performing. It's trading on behalf of me on crypto as well as public markets. I have Zerodha as an MCP connected to it.
Right.
It has access to my wallet. It's trading. So I think everyone will get so much better at it. That also becomes a problem.
Of course. Because, I mean, trading is also a zero-sum game, right?
Yeah.
For someone to, at least if you're in future
Someone has to
options,
lose.
Someone has to lose for someone
And
to win. I mean,
yes.
of course, if it's equity, it's different because there's wealth creation or destruction.
Yeah.
But futures and options is zero-sum game. Agar koi harega, tabhi koi jeetega.
Correct.
So,
And that becomes a problem because if everyone has the same level of information and expertise and ease of trading at their disposal, how do you differentiate the trading houses? How do they differentiate? How do hedge fund managers differentiate themselves? How do they? It's becoming like
everyone's going to be a Jane Street in time to come. Crazy.
That's
Wow. What else is really exciting you about the world that we live in today as we come to wrapping up?
I think AI hardware is the second big thing. Right now, we have only seen the software layer of AI.
Right.
Now, the hardware, how AI hardware will completely adapt. So, the whole bio side of it, how hardware will now completely infuse with you as a human, which will happen. I personally believe the time is quite close where we will have an assistant, like not the version of how Temple and Dipinder is. That's more tracker devising. I don't know what that is actually. No one knows. But also towards the version of, I think there will be assistants living at some way or hardware fashion. Human bodies will have assistants. Minds will have assistants some way or the other. I think we might not be needing to learn languages anymore. We will have a lot of... I have my AirPods today, which does real-time translations for me. On Google Meets, real-time translations are happening, which is completely seamless. So a lot of these skills of which were required and which made you stand out than the other individual will kind of become absolutely redundant. Hardware is going to be a big thing, how that pans out. And obviously the top four will start the race and then the long tail will follow.
So what would be your advice to, let's say there's a young boy or a young girl who's learning a language today and hopes to become a translator? What would your advice be to them?
Don't try. Yeah. It's like interpretation, translation is absolutely... Remember the times when people used to have humans doing subtitles for contents, movies and everything else?
True.
Today we don't.
No.
If you watch, everyone watches reels on Instagram, right? Instagram reels are now translated in multiple languages for you automatically. No one's doing it for you.
Yeah.
So if you're watching a Spanish reel, it's automatically for you translated into English for you.
Correct.
So these are not things that these are already automated.
Real-time
translation.
And as you said, gadgets, I mean, as Apple's done it with the third generation iPod Pro, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before everyone starts jumping into it.
Yes, hardware, I think it's very, very early to say what. I have not seen any big leap in a hardware space, specifically fused with AI. That's going to be one. I think modern warfare will change as we know it with the new world that today is.
Right.
So a lot is going to change very, very drastically.
Wow. Yeah, I love how this conversation was to start in one direction. Now it's gone totally into different things. But I'm sure our viewers and listeners would love this particular one.
Yeah, but I do believe the hardware opportunity is the biggest opportunity that today exists.
Yeah. And I also love how you mentioned that on the hardware side, it's of course the data center, it's the chips, but you're also taking people into account on the hardware side as well. Yeah,
people are the biggest part or pillar of the infrastructure of AI because someone is thinking that is why we have the first model. Someone is thinking how to make that model better. Yes, there will be a time when they will become also irrelevant because the model will start self-evolving, which is a scary part of that world. But models today are self-evolving if people follow the news.
In the Molt, was it Molt bot?
Molt bot, they created their own social world, but that's just a funny part of it. Right. But there's also a risky part of it, where someone did an experiment where they gave AI a power to control certain climate, like a chamber, and the AI had the power to control oxygen levels of that particular chamber.
Crazy.
And they tried to threaten that AI with, let's say, let's delete it.
Right.
And the AI responded in a way of infusing that chamber with so much oxygen that's actually lethal.
Kill those people. Yeah.
So we don't know where it is going, and this is the first thing that is out of control. Every other technology piece we have created so far had been in control. Yeah. This is the first piece that are completely out of control.
I believe there's a documentary coming, I think 17th of March, which is the AI Way or something. And I think on that, one of the questions that they ask, either maybe it was Sam Altman, I'm not sure, because in the trailer I've seen that they asked, so do you think that we'll be able to control AI and can you guarantee that's not going to do us any harm? And I think whoever the person that question was asked to says, I can't guarantee that.
People who are building cannot guarantee it. That's what you have created. That you consciously created that.
Mm.
And things like, let's go back. Tesla to completely perfect the self-driving autonomous vehicles took them decades and multi-trillion or whatever, billions and billions of dollars investment. Today, if a company wants to just adapt to that, it's going to be hours or maybe weeks max, because now you have gone to that point. So all of these things that you built your valuations on, the company's base principles on, have also become irrelevant. So there's value destruction from future, and there's also past value destruction of your skills. I don't know how consultant will survive. I don't know what consultant will do in longer run.
Man, Deloitte or EY, my clients here, but let's hope that again, I'm hoping that we can adapt in some form. I mean, the other day I was at a event which was by our school, which is a lot of schools in now, and the journalists were like, "So, what's your thought on AI?" And I'm like, hey, we've been doing AI for 100 years. And the guy's like, "I don't understand, because AI has not been around for 100 years." I'm like, "No, for scenarios, it's adapted intelligence. Hum adapt kar lenge, sambhal lenge." But you're right. It's an atmosphere where you can't take it for granted.
Yeah, it's a big event.
Yeah.
कि नहीं होगा, and people saying कि मेरी job तो secured है. I don't believe.
Agreed. But Vishesh, thank you so much for making it. Thank you for reaching out in the first place and saying that you'd like to connect. And I remember your message coming on Insta, and I said, "Yeah, this is cool, super. We must connect." And thank you for being here. And you're coming all the way down from Dubai, and safe travels back. And you're heading back, in a day or so. I hope everything stays well, and that all goes well over there. And of course, I told you we have some goodie bag hampers for you, hamper gifts for you as well. So just a few things for you to take back. So one is, of course, from Shantanu and Nikhil, we have a very nice pen. So for writing your thoughts, that's something from the Shantanu and Nikhil collection.
Thank you so much.
Of course, everyone who's been on the podcast, including Nikita, is there's a podcast cards. So this is all the cards, and of course, when we do the second edition, we'll have your cards there as well. Just a small souvenir to take back, which is the Let's Chat with GB coffee mug. So just like that. So just a souvenir to say that, hey, I was on the podcast, and that's something.
Thank you.
And then I know you mentioned you like to play the game of the stock market. So this is the game that I created a long time back, and it's on the stock market.
There's a game that existed. That's interesting.
So there's a board game, and it's called futures and options and also.
That's very interesting.
And the last one is the Scaling with GB Gold Planner, which has got some really cool goals that you can actually work on and do that. But
perfect. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was an absolute pleasure. And I really enjoyed this conversation. And hey, do drop in the comments what you guys and girls thought as well. I thought it was crazy. And once a disruptive founder, I believe always a disruptive founder, all through his life, Vishesh has been someone who has been solving problems, spotting those opportunities, making the most of them. And while totally on the AI game today, I'm going to make big things happen. Really, really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure you did as well. And looking forward to hearing more from you guys and girls. You all take care.